Now, we've been going across the country with our team of journalists on the ground to get a sense of how various parts of the country are waking up on day one of the national lockdown. And we cross now to our reporter, Maageketla Mohlabe, who's north of Johannesburg in Alexandra Township, to get a sense of what's happening there during this lockdown. Maageketla, thanks so much for joining us. Alexandra, an area that you know well, and when it's busy and bustling, you've been there. What's the situation today?
Yeah, very good afternoon to you, Peter. The picture that you see there, that is a live picture in Alexandra. We are in straight informal settlement, and that's part of Alexandra on the north of Johannesburg. And earlier on, we saw the army, one bus on board. It was the army or members of the SABC arriving here in Alexandra, just behind us. And I think that's where they're going to have a briefing with the mayor as well as other law enforcement agencies. But the message has been put across here. I saw some of the vehicles by police officers trying to actually tell these people you see in the picture to go back into their houses. But there has been some form of disobedience from them, because even some of the community leaders and those who were part of the total shutdown, Alex, tried to actually walk through the street telling everyone to say, please go back in your houses. As you know that this is a lockdown. The lockdown is active. It has been active for over 6 hours now, since midnight. And the question is, why are they still in the street when they know that we have an emergency case here? And of course, some of the people that we spoke to earlier on saying that, well, they feel like police are not really doing enough to actually set an example to them. That is why they seem to not take this issue seriously, and which is why you see them in the street roaming around, not of course fulfilling any essential service or even going to buy food as was declared in that particular order by the president. But of course, you would recall, Peter, that this is the area that is facing issues with regards to basic services. And of course, what I saw just where we passed, I saw people carrying buckets coming to fetch water. And of course, that means they are then forced to actually come out of their houses, to actually walk a few meters to actually come and fetch water. And that's the story of Alexandra. Basic services is basically an issue, is a difficulty that they've been facing for years. But of course, earlier on, you saw my colleague Hasina Gori crossing at one of the shops or at a mall in Alexandra with long queues of people trying to get food. And of course, some critics saying that we should actually sympathize with these people. And the reason why they are out of the streets is simply because just in the past week or even yesterday, they could not actually stand in a queue to buy food for their families. They live from hand to mouth, and which is why we may have to actually sympathize with them. And of course, that's some sort of plea to police to say, please do not try to use any sort of form or any form of force to actually disperse them, because while others were actually panic buying, these people here, these people you see here in the street, were trying to work for their families, and now that they have that little cash in their hands, they will have to then stand in those long queues to buy as little as they can in order to survive in the next few days or few weeks. But I can tell you that this is the situation in Alexandra, Peter. People roaming around the streets. And I can tell you, just a couple of minutes ago, we saw one resident being arrested, and this simply because there are some that are drinking in the streets And of course, just perhaps to reiterate what Police Minister Maageketla said just during that minister's briefing, he said that no one would be allowed to actually drink during this lockdown. But it seems that people continue to defy these rules, which is why we saw one of the residents being arrested. And of course, I tried to speak to him, asking him why is he then intoxicated in the street on the first day of the lockdown. And what he said is that he didn't know anything about coronavirus. And what he says is also that he was just having fun in the street. And the fact that there is a lockdown, he didn't know anything about that. But what you see in this picture, these are some of the community members that are trying to actually carry the message across to say, go back into your houses. But I can tell you that there is a sense of defiance among some of the residents here, and they are still in the streets, as you can see in that picture, Peter.
All right, Maageketla, we'll leave it there for the time being, but no doubt we'll be crossing to you again a little bit later on. So that's Maageketla Mohlabe, our reporter there in Alexandra, just north of Johannesburg. And one of the issues that we're seeing, particularly in these highly densely populated areas, people not always complying with this order to stay indoors. All right, let's catch you up with some business in the meantime.